Now, recently, me and my fiance had a very interesting conversation about identity and career success, and he dropped some serious truth bombs that I think are so good that I need to share them, and they might even change your perspective on how to choose your workplace, your clients, even your projects. So if you're curious, stick around. Hi, my name is Kat and I teach people about writing in tech, and on this channel you will find everything that you need to know about writing, telling a great story, trying to make this world a beautiful place with words and not losing our minds along the way. So if you care about all of that just as much as I do, make sure you hit subscribe and ring the bell. So today I want to tell you kind of a personal story which really gave me a huge aha moment and that I still think about today, so I thought it might be really worth sharing. And the story began when I recently discovered a creator on TikTok called Babushka, and she runs a TikTok account about a movement or kind of like a philosophy called Bimbo Stoicism. You might even have heard of it. It's kind of blowing up right now, and it's kind of a feminist movement that's all about radically accepting who you are as a person and totally deny and refuse all forms of societal pressure, especially when it comes to beauty standards, but instead it encourages women to radically embrace their unique features, like their facial features and also their body type. And this creator recently mentioned something that she called vibe maxing, which means that you should basically look at your features and see what kind of vibe you give off, and then embrace that vibe, because that sort of helps you romanticize your looks and your identity and accept yourself a little better. So instead of seeing yourself like a blonde, pale, boring woman in her 30s, you start to see yourself as this fair-skinned, magical northern fairy tale princess. And if you came for writing advice or writing career advice, stay with me, okay? We will get there. Now, all of that caught my attention because I thought that it was such a playful take at self-acceptance. And I am currently indeed trying to invite playfulness into my life a little more. So what I did is I explained the entire concept of vibe maxing to ChatGPT, and I uploaded a photo of myself and asked ChatGPT for the vibe that I give off. And you know what ChatGPT said? Like, the absolute audacity it had. It said, you give off the vibe of the main character's smart but very shy best friend who stays in the background. You know, I'm not really a fan of LLMs, and I want to be honest, this experience didn't really contribute to our relationship getting better. So to cope with that, I did what? Right. Complained to my fiance about exactly that. And he actually had a really smart take on this. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is also why we don't talk to machines, we talk to human beings. And here's another lesson on that, because my fiance said, yeah, that actually is your vibe. And I was like, And then he went on and he said, but that's only when you look at it from a certain perspective, like from a cliche perspective, like in a sea full of party people or full of cool surfer beach people. Yeah, you might be that shy side character who stays in the background. But when looking at a different setting, imagine a big research institute or a university, like imagine Oxford University, for example. You would be the one on the stage giving a speech or giving a lecture, and in a courtroom, you would be that main character state attorney. You would be the one sitting on an academic panel sharing important takes. And that surfer beach person or the extrovert party person would feel out of place. And his point was that whether or not you are a main character also depends on your environment. And that really made me think, because looking back at my own experience, I can absolutely confirm that. Throughout my career as a writer and also as a communication strategist, as a communication researcher, I have worked in many different environments. Like, I started out in the big research and development department of Volkswagen. I worked as a consultant for a big Ford company. Then I worked for a public broadcasting company in a software department. And then I worked in a UX agency. And right now I have a part-time job in an energy startup, and I have my own business. So these are definitely a lot of different environments, right? And I have to say that out of all of these environments, I felt most confident at Volkswagen and at the public broadcaster, where I both worked among engineers and strategy people. And I felt most out of place in the UX agency that I worked for. And looking back at it, that agency, that place really kind of irritated my confidence because it was really one of those cool places to work at. They had this huge creative open space office right in the city center, and the founders were even those cliche creative agency founder guys, and everybody on the team was like super extroverted and outgoing, and many people also dressed in a very extravagant way, and everybody was very funny and bold and pully jokes and witty. There were parties going on all the time, and that was exactly where I was standing on the sideline a lot, even though I was really successful while working there. I had fully established UX writing as a service there. I pulled big clients. I also became the head of the marketing and communication activities of the agency. But there were always these little moments when I was giving presentations or I was participating in discussions where I felt unnaturally nervous and self-conscious and not really confident. And that was also because there were these little jokes about me and the way that I work, not necessarily in a mean way, but in a way that was intended to be funny, but they were actually really personal. Like when I wanted to do things a little more carefully and attentively and, pay attention to the details, my boss was always like, don't turn everything into a doctoral thesis. Like you could tell that I just didn't have the strengths that it would have taken to thrive in this environment, including the looks, the mannerism, the humor, and the strengths that I did have, like the systematic approach to solving problems, or my professionalism, or my research background, or adhering to certain industry standards. All of that didn't matter because that was just not something that was appreciated in this environment. And I remember feeling really terrible and insecure about all of this back then, also because I thought that I was just wrong. I was just not one of the cool kids, right? Like I was the problem. But later on, I understood that I learned a lot in that job, but it was just not my place to thrive, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with me or that this is a bad place with bad people. Absolutely not. Like one of my closest friends right now, I met there, so there were great people, but it was just not my natural habitat, not my vibe, so to say. And so I was standing on the sideline constantly. So this is also a message to you. If you are currently working in an environment or even living in an environment that makes you feel out of place or ugly or just not right or boring or less than, that might be the reason for that. And as I said, that's okay. That's part of life. That doesn't mean that you are not okay or that the environment you find yourself in is not okay, even though some work environments, of course, are definitely more toxic and hostile than others. But it just means that you have to move on, okay, and find your place to be in. And if you can already look back on some experience and feel like, hey, I have felt more in tune, more aligned in this place and less aligned in this other place, that might point you in the right direction, in the direction of where you belong, right? And thrive. So have you had similar experiences? Can you relate? Also, have you already checked out writewithdrkat.com? Because that is where you can find more writing education if that is something that you could benefit from. Also, make sure to check out my newsletter, the UX Writing Memo. It's written with a lot of love and care, and it's completely free, so make sure to check that out. And apart from that, as always, for me, there is nothing left to say at this point, except keep on writing, enjoy the process, and I hope to see you sometime soon.